Hey everybody, welcome to Alex and DJ Watch a Doc. I'm DJ.
I'm Alex.
And we're happy to have you. As always, what are you laughing about?
Because we got this terrible lag, and I said I'm Alex right when you said I'm DJ, but you probably heard it right after. Is that right?
Oh yeah, the timing sounded perfect on my end. Well, we'll let the listeners and viewers know we are currently working on that lag. We believe it might be a Wi-Fi issue because you just moved into a new place. We're not sure. We're not, tech experts, but we're working on it.
Let's go into depth about it because, once they started hearing about Wi-Fi troubleshooting issues, they were thinking, tell me more, DJ, tell me more.
We come here to escape our Wi-Fi troubleshooting issues. We don't want to be immersed in yours. Speaking of being immersed, huh?
Oh, well. Somebody stopped off at the Segway amusement park. That's the stupidest. All right.
That was kind of a tangent to last week's episode, so I'll
That's
accept
kind of what
it.
it was, yeah.
This week we watched Last Breath, which is a breathtaking... I can't stop. A breathtaking
I think this is more of an unamusement park, if I may.
Last Breath was about a man, Chris Lemons, I believe his last name was. His first name was for sure
Lemons.
Chris Lemons, who is a sat diver, a saturation diver, diving deep in the North Sea, working on this particular job, an oil rig, I believe, that was at the bottom of the North Sea, and he becomes trapped for a very long time, what would seem a death-inducing amount of time, but I guess we can give it away at the beginning here.
No,
can we, Alex?
They didn't give it away.
So we should follow their formula?
You seem really uncertain the way you... Yeah, no, I think that, that was one of the things I found. There were two things I want to say about that. First of all, they were clearly holding on to that, like, is he going to make it or isn't he? I mean, that was a suspense movie. I feel like most of this was a suspense thriller. That it was a documentary. It could just as easily just been a straight up fictional drama. So and then there was a moment, though, I just want to I might as well bring this up now because I'm a stickler about it. There's a moment where they go, one of the guys, Dave or whatever it was, the guy who was the diver number one, I think he said, and that was the last time I saw him. Well, wait a moment. That wasn't the last time you saw him. That's making me think that was the last time you saw him. That was the last time you saw him during the dive. I'll grant you that, but you didn't say that, did you, Dave? Fucking Vulcan.
But I like that they did that because I picked up on that too because, just to get it out of the way, for the first hour, they don't show Chris. They show everybody who's on the dive with him, his wife, everybody except him. So like you said, you're wondering, did he live or did he die? So little liberties like the one you just described that Dave said, his co-diver, gave it that added. They might have even just chopped it. He might have been like, that was the last time I saw him on this dive, and they just cut out that on this dive part. That was the last time I saw him. Right. Cut! We got what we need.
Yeah, but then that is that true documentarian footage, or is that now manipulating an audience? I mean, what is a documentary? Let's explore that for the next 20 minutes.
It's a very good question, though, because the more entertaining a documentary is, the more it makes me go, is this really a documentary?
Like, it really did. This one felt a little bit like, I felt because it said in the beginning it was a combination of documentary footage and reconstructed footage. And when I'm watching, I'm thinking like so much of this, I guess, is reconstructed. I'm even thinking like when Chris is talking and showing around the bunkers and all that sort of thing. What is that before or after? I mean, did they just do that after the fact to sort of? I mean, I guess it must have been before. I'm trying to think.
I think it was before.
It was like 9 years ago, so he would have looked older if it was if they did it after the fact.
Yeah, I think it was before, but to be honest with you, I didn't even think about that because they could have easily recreated that after. But it felt, you know why it felt like it was before? Because I actually want to talk to you about this. He went through. I mean, we'll get into the specifics of it, but this dude was basically dead on the bottom of the ocean floor and came back to life. And it seemed like in the documentary, when they showed footage of him on the ship being playful before on his own personal camera, going full Val Kilmer on the vessel, that's a throwback to another episode. But he seemed very playful. And when he was talking afterwards, like when he was finally introduced in the documentary, that playful element to his personality seemed to have disappeared with his near-death experience. Mind you, he's talking about this very traumatizing experience, so I wouldn't expect him to be in jolly good spirits in the retelling. But it seemed like he was a different person in the footage they showed before with his playful, handy cam footage versus after. He seemed different. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I suppose that's true, but see, I'm trying to think. Okay, so it's funny because now I'm starting to recount how not just him, but the different people we saw. Like, did we see reactions from people? For example, when Duncan, I think it was maybe his name, his diver daddy or whatever they call Sat Daddy.
Daddy.
Yeah, right. They called him when he was pulling up the different parts of the umbilical, where it went from the hot water to keep him warm, and then the gas to feed him the oxygen. I mean, did we? I remember seeing the images of that being pulled up, but did we see a reaction shot from Duncan? I think that's his name. Doing that, you know what I mean? So then that would definitely be a reenactment.
Yeah, do you know, was his name Duncan? If it isn't, no disrespect, but the Sat Daddy, the guy who stayed in the bell while Dave and Chris went down and did their dive.
Yeah. It was Duncan. Sat Daddy for Chris.
Duncan.
Yeah.
Sat Daddy is a hilarious term, but he appeared, if I had to guess, it seemed like he was also acting in his own reenactments. Like a few of the other people, you could tell they were actors playing them, but it felt like they had so much footage of him in the bell that was high def, not that grainy real footage from the time of the incident. I feel like he was acting in his own reenactments.
Yes, but that's why I'm wondering if he's doing it, who else is doing it, and does that include Chris? In which case now we're looking at it's funny. It does make me think of also TV shows that are like that. These true crime shows where they'll do certain reenactments, and sometimes they will involve the actual person. And I don't know. It's just all
it can get confusing.
It just feels like I think one of what you're somewhat tuning in for when you're watching a documentary is the knowledge that what I'm seeing actually happened as it happened.
Yeah.
And so if it's a reenactment, now it's starting to get into docudrama territory, and docudramas have a lot of license to start changing the facts if they need to in order for the story to be more compelling. They'll go, well, let's just adjust this or just amalgamate these characters. And so I don't know. All these like Hollywood style documentaries. I'm on the fence with this stuff. I mean, this thing, I thought, if I'm going to, might as well just say right now, I sort of felt it had the suspense, but it still felt like I was watching a movie, a suspenseful, perfect storm type movie. And frankly, I found it a little shallow.
And that's the show, folks. We hope you enjoyed watching. I mean, where do you go after a joke like that? Huh?
I don't know, but we seem to have one every episode. So if you wanted to, if you like this, there'll be more.
Yeah, and even go back and watch our old episode. Do a deep dive, if you will. Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to agree or disagree with you on this one, which we normally have kind of similar opinions, but I was completely enthralled the whole time, and I felt like the story itself was so captivating that I allowed them to do the reenactment, because the actual footage, from what I could ascertain was actual footage, was scary and traumatizing as hell. So if we can just go to the actual incident, he's down there.
Sure.
So they're doing deep saturation diving. So I did a bit of reading after, because the movie wasn't enough to really, one time hearing a description of what sat diving is was not enough for my feeble brain. So I had to really be like, what the hell are they doing? So they're going deep, like 1,000 feet deep. They're, pretty much as deep as you can go. Maybe not, I don't know if they can go down to Mariana's Trench or something, but they're going way down there. And what happens is, obviously, your body has to acclimate to the incredible pressure that's going on down there. So these guys are spending weeks, months at a time, and they're on this specific blend of heliox gas, which is, I was reading into this. So our body is naturally 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and then 1% other. But if you go too deep with nitrogen, there's something called nitrogen
narcosis.
You got it. Narcosis. So you were doing a little reading on this too, or did you already know a bit about diving?
Well, let's see. What makes me sound smarter? I would say that I did a little research. So, yeah, that's what happened.
We're friends here. You don't have to sound smarter. We're just being truthful with each other.
This is not for you, DJ.
So nitrogen narcosis. So that's why they use helium, because it's lighter, and it's 7 times lighter, which is why helium makes your voice sound like that too. I never really knew why helium did. So the sound travels quicker through it because it's lighter. So these guys are often ex-military, ex-police divers, like some of the toughest guys you can imagine, all sound hilarious down there on this heliox mix. And there's actually something, they didn't mention this in the movie, but a lot of the ships use something called helium descrambler, which is like a software that will convert your voice back to its normal octave from the helium sound, because it's hard to understand. We could have used
that a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, when you had that weird helium sounding voice.
Yeah, that was right.
So they're down there, and once they leave this bell and they're actually just out there in their suit in the water, they have this umbilical cord that's providing communication, hot water to keep them warm, because obviously it's freezing down at the bottom of this North Sea, and this heliox mixture, everything is going through this umbilical cord.
Always just a constant, a little stream of delicious soup just to keep you nourished. I'm making that part up.
Keep the morale high. They should do that. It's coming. But his umbilical cord just broke in half because the ship started moving away, because the DP, the direct positioning, was that what the DP stood for?
Mm-hmm.
And be honest, when they called it DP, I think it was did you think anything sexual with DP?
No, my mind was up high. Yours was low. It's understandable, but yeah, it is. What was it? DP mode is dynamic positioning.
Dynamic positioning, which was a mind-blowing device I'd never heard of either. Had you heard of that?
Yeah, they used to call it an anchor. Anyway, look, everything gets fancier with age.
But it is actually just like a digital anchor. Like when the sea is too deep to actually drop an anchor, there was something else called something barge that I was reading up on that was like the next logical thing after the anchor. And then this DP is the next thing, which is the ship just using the thrusters and being able to keep it in the same position based on prevailing winds, the currents, everything. And it's like a digital type of anchor. Mind-blowing stuff. Yeah. That thing goes awry. The ship starts drifting. His umbilical cord is cut. He's completely unmoored in the darkest, deepest area of the North Sea while his ship is drifting away from him. He's got a 5-minute canister of this heliox mixture. Other than that, he's got nothing to live or breathe in terms of pressure, oxygen, everything. And he's down there for over 30 minutes after he's out of that last...
There was nothing that could be done for him either, right? Because he was stuck, and there was that moment where his partner was, listen, buddy, there's nothing I can do for you. Anyway, listen, I gotta go. Listen, I'm no coward. There's nothing I can do. See you later. Anyway, I like the fact that guy described himself as, I mean, not described himself, but others called him kind of a bit of a Vulcan because he didn't really show much emotion. And then there was that point where he said, listen, if I'm going to be honest with you, listen, he's not a buddy of mine. He's not family. So I didn't really care that much.
When he finally got
of humor.
When he called himself a Vulcan, I thought I couldn't be surprised by how emotionless he actually was. Like, Vulcan was almost an understatement for how detached this guy was. Like, when he finally had to go retrieve the body, he was like, I just assumed he was dead and I was transporting this thing from one place to another. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, he was really just, listen, the job's got to keep going. Well, it's funny because he's described as being emotionally detached. But then, I was learning a little bit more about this. They do choose, people are really vetted before they can do this sort of thing, because you are stuck with only a few people for 28 days in this can. So they really have to be very amiable. They say, they're not, you don't, if you're thinking like tough guys and all that sort of thing, really real macho type guys, that's not really the psychological profile. They really want somebody who's easy to get along with.
and somebody who can keep their cool in this exact situation. So that's kind of the exact guy you want. Like, because the other guy, the
he
sat
reminds
daddy,
me a little bit like yeah, right. He reminds me a little bit like what they say about surgeons. They might not have the best bedside manner, but you don't really want them to be too attached.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, his demeanor was, well, it actually made it even more moving. Just to continue my thought from before, Sat Daddy knew Chris really well and knew his fiance Morag, so he was filled with all these emotions of like, I can't let my friend die. And then the other guy, the Vulcan guy, David, was the complete opposite, just doing my job. So it was cool to see how both of them reacted in that situation. But then when he was actually pulled up, David showed emotion in the actual footage they showed from the bell when he just grabbed him by the hand there quick. That was a pretty moving moment.
Right. Maybe he's just doing that for show. But I wonder if
for show in that moment. For show for who? They're going to make a documentary about this in 8 years, and I want to make sure people know I have some emotion.
Well, clearly we saw it, so somebody's looking. Maybe this is to go back to the bosses. It's like, oh, okay, all right, he's not completely devoid of human emotion. But I do think, though, that it's interesting to see people, like when we were talking about Duncan getting emotional. I was thinking about that as well. It's like, would I get that emotional like 9 years later? It's strange to me. Like, I think that, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I would. I just feel like 9 years later, I even if I'm recalling the events, I don't know if I'd start being, I don't know if I'd be brought to tears like some of these guys would. I mean, I know you would be. I'm just wondering, I know I would.
Yeah, you are definitely the Duncan or the David here, and I am the Duncan.
I got some Duncan in me. Come on, don't sell me short.
Yeah, you're not a complete Vulcan. But, let's put this in perspective, man. That you don't make a lot of friends when you're out at the ocean. I mean, it's hard enough to stay connected to your family when you have a job that is this demanding and this socially, isolating. So think of the connection you have with your brothers and sisters in arms down here, mainly brothers, the way it sounds like, the amount of men that are doing this. But that connection would be extremely strong. So that's one of your best friends on the planet who literally died. He died down there and you revived him. That's a pretty traumatic experience to relive and retell.
I suppose it would be. Yeah, maybe you're right. I don't know. Like I said, I just thought it was, I guess because I also did first think these guys would be maybe more macho, so it was surprising. But now that I realize, after doing a little more research, that they're actually vetted to be a little bit more personable, that I guess it makes more sense that they would be more emotionally attached, except for Dave the Vulcan.
Could you imagine how much of a nightmare it would be to be in one of these little containers, one of these diving bells with somebody you could not stand?
Listen, I can barely do cruise ships. I don't know how these people do this.
Oh, I can barely do Zoom calls.
It does feel a little bit like we're two different diving bells trying to communicate.
I can hit end on this call at any time. There's no end button when you're trapped at the bottom of the ocean.
Fair, that's true enough, isn't it? I do. It was like I say, when I was doing some research on this. One of the attractive features of this job, though, is the pay. Huh? They do get paid a lot, as they should.
I believe that's called hazard pay. I don't even know if hazard pay begins to describe what this job is.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's again, I would choose not to do it. I mean, the pay is attractive, but I have gone diving a couple, like once, sort of, when I was like, Dominican, illegal diving, that kind of thing. And I did find it, I never really pursued it, but I did find it pretty attractive. Like when he was describing one of the great moments is when you release and you start to just float like weightlessly down. And I was thinking, and he was saying it almost feels like you're flying down. It's like, that's what I remember that was so exciting about diving, is that you just feel so free to move in any direction that it really feels like you're flying. That was good. That was good times.
I bet. I was in Australia and I snorkeled instead of scuba diving because when I was on the boat, they gave a checklist of like, if you have these things, you shouldn't scuba dive. And I had like literally, I think 8 of 10 of the things on the list. It was like a history of ear infections, asthma, like I forget the other thing, but I was like, nah, I'm good. But I think I'm going to try it sometime because watching this movie inspired me. Like, obviously, I don't need to be going down to the depths of the North Sea, but I watched a thing on Jacques Cousteau after just because I was like enamored. They mentioned him, and he's obviously the godfather of scuba diving. I didn't realize he actually invented scuba diving. Jacques Cousteau, the breath regulator.
I think I did remember hearing that. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So I watched the whole thing on his son, Philippe Cousteau. Like, I'll put the video in our bibliography thing. It's amazing. He was checking out the wrecks of all these old Japanese warships in like Micronesia. Just amazing. But the like under the water it's like they mentioned, it's kind of like going to outer space. It's like nobody get to see these things. So what a privilege for these people to, and another thing that draws people to this particular career is the pay that you mentioned, but the asceticism, which I think is a beautiful word to describe what these people, it's almost like being a monk, or like nobody can understand the deprivation that you have to go through in order to do this job. So a lot of these people leave the job because of the danger and everything, and because of the lack of connection to their family and all these sorts of things, but they come back because those same things are the flip side of the coin that draws them to it.
That's funny. They want to get away from their families once they realize they spent some time with them. Yeah, I know that feeling too. Wow.
It's true, right? We all know that feeling. If you're a traveling comedian or anything, like I'll be on the road and I'm like, man, I can't wait to just get back. And you get back, and not that I don't, love my family and everything, but you get back, and after a day or two, you're like, the road's pretty awesome.
Well, we're definitely going to be using this clip, so that way we can post it online and have your wife see it.
Well, even like if imagine I get in an argument or something, I'm like, I regret all those times I was yearning alone in my hotel room thinking about how beautiful it was going to be when I came home. How dare you yell at me like this? You're ruining my fantasies from 3 days ago. I hold it against her. You know what I mean? I bet you Chris did that when he came back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm sure he also said, I regret yearning for you.
Do you know when I was dying on the bottom of the ocean floor how much I thought of you? And you're really going to yell at me about monthly finances right now?
What a real waste of yearning. I'd have to say that's one of the most wasteful yearns I've ever had.
Hey, speaking of yearn, I'd like to talk about urine for a second. If we may engage in a little homonym segue.
Please
there.
Let it flow.
So when how do they go? Let it flow. Okay, you're good. I almost let that one stream on by me. I don't know. So when they go to the bathroom, the pressure, because they actually need to open 2 valves in order to let it go out. Like it's a 2-man job to be able to go to the bathroom in this chamber that they're in, this bell, because they need other people opening valves. It's like a complicated thing. And this article I read, this guy, his last name's Tweddle. He's a guy who's a sat diver. He said one of the best things you can have, one quality that makes a good saturation diver is the ability to shit on command, because they have to do it before they go out. They can pee in their suit and everything, but they have to be able to shit before they go out. And there's this article I was reading, I'll put it in the bibliography as well. There's a hopefully apocryphal. I always forget how to say that word. That's it?
Apocryphal?
Apocryphal. A hopefully apocryphal story about somebody who was shitting on the toilet in the wet pod, I think it's called, the wet, whatever it is. But their cheeks created too much of a seal. So they had made a perfect seal. So when the flush happened, and this article said, we don't need to describe the rest, but I think it sucked out all their innards. Like, even going to the bathroom in this thing is a high-risk proposition.
Let me just take a moment here. Oh, God.
That's got to be the worst way to go.
Oh, Lord in heaven. I'll tell you, if they have to crap on command, just give them a coffee and a cigarette, for God's sakes. Well, don't let something like that happen.
I wonder if it's possible to smoke down there. That would be a hilarious image. There's no way, right?
I would imagine not, no. And I was thinking, too, when they're like, they said something about, when I was finding out about how they work, like the fact that, first of all, the depressurization, like they go like 90 meters and depressurize all the way down, and it takes like days to do that. Like they go in their chambers and just hang out and wait for it to happen. And same with like, on the way back up as well. And so it's really just a 10-meter dive for them to go from the thing. Anyway, so I was just thinking too. They said they work for 6 hours, and I thought like, so they work like straight for 6 hours. Like, how does that work? Like, do they have a lunch break? How do they? 6 hours. You eat? How do you eat? Do you?
I think they work for 6 hours straight.
No food?
Well, they eat double the amount of calories you normally eat. These people were talking about, this article I was reading talked about how much food they eat because they're expending a lot of energy down there as well because of all the pressure and everything. So, yeah, they work for 6 hours straight, but they eat big meals that are delivered to them from the ship twice a day.
So that makes sense. So it's like they're pretty much saturated with oxygen and carbs. Like they're fully saturated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
which is one of the things they said, like the reason why he was able to live for 30 minutes without oxygen was that the oxygen is so saturated that maybe that was enough. But they weren't entirely sure, and I almost felt like one of the things missing is I wanted to hear one or two expert opinions as to what a doctor of some kind would think was the reason that he was able to live, because they made it sound like some miracle that nobody could explain. It's like, well, did you try asking anybody? Hello, documentary.
I know, I agree with you wholeheartedly. He explained his hypothesis, which you just described, and he was like, but I don't know, that's just my guess. You're like, well, does somebody have a not guess? Does anybody have any information around here?
Did you run out of time to be able to maybe like make a few calls and see if there was, experts around? Anyway, this is what I'm talking about when I say it was a bit shallow. Yeah.
I see what you mean. So his theory seems to make sense, though. He was so saturated with oxygen and so cold because this umbilical cord that got cut also was the thing that kept him warm. So when that got cut, he was freezing down there. So all his organs were able to, again, this is just his hypothesis, but all his organs were able to live off of the stored saturated oxygen that he had accumulated. And he was also using way less oxygen because his metabolism had slowed down so much because of how extremely cold he was. He was doing what like frogs do, I think, right? A lot of amphibians do this exact thing.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, listen, to me, that sounds like a really good guess. I don't know. Would like to hear it from an expert. I just think it's, to me, kind of funny that they as he's saying this, I'm like, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But why am I listening to your guess as to what it is? I really felt like, just give me something that's not just, like, it really almost felt like all we have is these guys to talk to. So hopefully you want to do a little reading up. Maybe you could ask a friend.
Yeah, tell us what you found, because we're really curious too. I read this article, again, if you guys are interested in this as much as we are, this article I read was really, really cool and going in depth in some of the questions I had after watching this movie. But there were 4 other instances of people surviving that long after sinking to really cold depths of the ocean or lake. And there was one, I didn't follow up on it, but there was one story in this article of a 2.5-year-old girl who sunk to the bottom of a cold lake for 66 minutes and was pulled up and survived. 2.5 years old. Can you imagine being the parent of a 2.5-year-old? Kind of feeling like David the Vulcan felt, probably like as a parent being like, I have to be pragmatic. I'm about to pull up my dead child here. And then she's alive after over an hour? Insane. It's
bizarre. That's bizarre. That's like cryogenics or something. It was bizarre. That really is. It is amazing. I mean, it really is. Again, I would love to hear what the theories are as to how the body's able to do that. And I mean, can it be induced? Is this the kind of thing they're looking at for space travel or anything like that to, slow down the body for long periods of time, or, something like that. I'm just throwing that out there. But again, it felt like that's really fast. Like, to me, okay, so I guess why I'm a stickler on this is the whole movie, to a great extent, hinges upon the fact that this guy survived surprisingly, in the midst of that, and yet we. Like, that's, it really just, I felt like it was so much focus on the action. Again, getting back to the idea that this felt more like a movie, that on the action, that I didn't feel like there was as much information as I would have liked.
Yeah, I agree with. I guess I was so transfixed that I put my stickler side of my brain away for a bit, which I guess is a sign that they did it right. But if I have to analyze it now,
No,
you're right.
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, the stickler never sleeps, as far as I'm concerned.
That footage of him though, like twitching, and then like going fully limp from the rover footage that ended up finding him before the ship made its way back. That was pretty chilling stuff.
Yeah, the fact that they said, "Oh, he's waving," I'm like, I kind of think that looks like a seizure. Is that waving to you?
Who thought that was waving?
I hate to be a stickler again. By the way, I do want to say that the stickler would be the Batman villain that I would be in any kind of Batman film.
Batman's like, I'll see you in hell. I don't think so, Batman.
I think so.
If there is a
Purgatory,
hell.
maybe.
Do you know, I just think that part really like kind of took me out of it when they said he's waving. I'm like, is this a joke? Did this movie just turn into a comedy sketch? Like who's waving like, oh, okay, see you later, Alex. Nobody waves like that. That's not a wave.
Dear Lord.
Even if you take into account the suit and everything, you're not twitching like that.
Yeah, it's sort of like, wow, this guy, he's got a real spastic wave, huh? What a loser. Oh, actually, he's dying.
Yeah, if you have a wave like that, you got to be careful. You can never have any sort of health episode in public because people will be like, oh, him? That's just how he waves.
Yeah, really. Those are not the friends you want to have around if you have any form of epilepsy. Thank you very much.
You want to get into the final 3 questions?
Let's get the hell out of here. Sure.
Okay. I always forget. Oh yeah, first question, Alex. What did you learn?
I learned that. I didn't really know that much about sat diving. I still don't know that much about it because this was mostly a kind of a drama, and I also learned that you can tell the viewer about half hour to 45 minutes into a film what the hell they're actually even doing down there. I forgot. I was like, what the hell are they? Oh, it's an oil rig situation. They're just replacing a pipe. Oh, okay. The whole time I'm thinking, so what are they doing down there? What
True.
Are they going to tell us?
It's true. You know, I learned that they started drilling in the North Sea and the Gulf of Mexico in the 1970s when there was a huge worldwide oil scare. That's when they first started drilling in these like treacherous areas that require this kind of diving and all this stuff. So context would have been nice in the movie too. Why are we drilling up in the North Sea? Why do we need to do this?
Maybe let's start investing more in solar power and electric cars.
Maybe. I mean, they don't necessarily have to form an opinion like that or, push an agenda like that necessarily in a documentary, but context would be nice.
Yeah. No, the context is good. I was just being a smart ass. Aside from that, I didn't expect the documentary to bring that up. I'm bringing it up.
But what you said is salient because I think they are winding down a lot of the stuff in the North Sea because of dwindling demand.
Right.
So, that's why you're so funny. Even your jokes are rooted in truth.
And you said that in a way that I almost feel like it slightly sarcastic, but we'll accept that. Thanks a lot.
No, it was completely genuine. Here, I'll tell you what I learned too, because I also learned a lot about sat diving. But the one thing I learned is that, 2 things I learned that stuck with me is that the general rule for depressurization, DSAT, is 24 hours for each 100 feet of pressure. So DSAT for these guys is actually the most trying time because they're coming up so close to seeing their family, but now they're sitting just depressurizing without the work to keep them busy. They're just literally waiting for their body to acclimate to the regular pressures while they're just coming up. And
but they're able to binge movies and shows.
I guess so, but still, they've been down there for a month or however long.
Yeah, no,
and then
I hear you.
Here's another thing that I learned is that when you panic down there, you start breathing so quick that the system itself can't keep up. So it's a perfect storm for panic. As you breathe an excess of carbon dioxide and begin to huff harder and harder, the only way out is to wrestle down the fear and breathe as slowly as possible until the system catches up. It's so common a phenomenon that divers have a name for it. They call their helmet a hat. That's what they call it. So this phenomenon is called breathing past your hat.
Ooh.
But that would be my fear. I never had a name for it, but even when I was thinking about scuba diving, that's been my fear. And I'm kind of happy to know it wasn't unfounded, that you can actually breathe so hard that the system just can't keep up with your panic.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that because panic is quite a cycle. Like once the more you worry about it, the worse it gets, and then you just can't get out of it. And that's the scary part, is that you know there's a way out, but you somehow can't figure it out.
Yeah, and even telling yourself to breathe can like have the opposite effect. Breathe? How can I breathe? I'm dying. But if you breathe, you'll stop dying. No way, man, it's a trap.
I don't buy it. I'm dying.
So, how'd you feel while watching it?
Well, admittedly, I'll say that they did suck me in a little bit with the images, and like it was well shot, and the score, the sound, the music, the welling up of music. I was trying to push it away. I was like, don't you mess with my emotions. You stay away from my emotions.
You watched it on mute just in case?
I was like, you will not manipulate me. Do it for the family.
So I felt a lot of the same things. I think I was more stirred by it than you. And then the cynical part of my brain I kind of alluded to earlier as well, but I just thought like he had all these visions of the house he was building with his fiance and the life ahead of them. And I was moved by that because, I'm in the early stages, as you are, of a marriage and like thinking about your future and all that. So it hit me in a really kind of personal way. Right. But then the cynical part of me did kind of have that thought like, damn, man, like there's almost more pressure now. Like, you know what I mean? If in 3 years they realize they're falling out of love or something, it's like, damn, if only I could recapture those feelings I had when I was dying on the ocean floor.
You're just trying to conjure up that moment of mortality. Come on, care again.
Yeah, I loved you more when I was dying.
Yeah. I just need to. So he traps himself in the closet for a while just to get that darkness, see if he can get it back.
Yeah. Death is a hell of an aphrodisiac.
They just don't say that enough. Is that why they call the French call it the little death?
Do you know what I just realized? What do the French call it? The little death?
Yeah. Petit mort, or something like that.
Oh. I didn't even realize, but I was quoting Will Ferrell in Wedding Crashers. He says that exact line when he starts going to funerals to pick up widows. I'm pretty sure he says death is the ultimate aphrodisiac or something like that. I thought I was making something up.
Yeah, I'm glad that you gave credit, because that would have been really disappointing,
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Yes, I agree with you.
But I felt more than you, I think.
Yeah, you always do.
Is that true?
Well, you say things like, I put my cynical side away, and I said, no, that's not fair to my cynical side. I like my cynical side to watch the movie with me.
I got you. I invited him in intermittently. I'm like, get on in here. I need you. And then not now. Let me feel this.
I'm enjoying this moment. Yeah.
Final question. Where do we go from here?
Well, two things. I wish where the movie went was that when he was alone down there in the dark, that a large underwater alien ship came up, just like it did in the abyss. I was waiting for that moment. That's where I wish it went from there. Yeah, it did totally feel that like that moment.
You think the reveal is that he's alive, but that's just the reveal before the reveal.
Yeah, exactly. That's when it would. Then I'd feel like, see, that's when I always wished that was true life, and then that would make feel good, like finding out that UFOs are real. Anyway, but where I go from here is I still do feel like I want to do some diving myself. I don't think I'm going sat diving, but because that sounds terrible. Thanks, but no thanks.
No way. Like you said, you can barely do cruise ships. I'm the same way. I've been on cruise ships. Yeah. No way. The idea of being underwater on top of that, and doing a really hard job. Like they're lifting. This is oil rigs at the bottom of the ocean. I mean, nah.
I mean, it's still they're basically underwater astronaut construction workers.
Exactly. That's a perfect description of what they're doing. Underwater astronaut construction worker. Making approximately $1,400 a day from what I read.
Oh, is that what it was? Yeah. Yeah, because I think I heard something like, maybe it was a monthly amount I thought I saw. Or it was like 14,000 or I don't know. I don't remember now. You could be right. It's
decent money, but scary as hell. Most of them are out of the career within 5 years.
Oh, right. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, he was back at it 3 weeks after. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Yes.
What did you say? Sorry, I missed it.
No, just that he said that he was back 3 weeks after that incident.
That was pretty insane. That he had no brain damage and that he had a desire to go back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe that is the brain damage. Where do we go from here? Well, I watched that Jacques Cousteau thing after. Well, Philippe Cousteau, but Jacques was in it as well. And I was like, man, the ocean's amazing. I got to watch. I just got to learn more about it. Like, I want to watch all the old Cousteau stuff and just kind of dive into that more. That pun came to me. I didn't mean to do it, but there's no better word for diving into it. But
wow.
But you know what I've realized, Alex?
You could really sit down on your couch and it would be like a sat dive if you were to dive into city because you sat down.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, for a guy who makes fun of puns, you really went a long way for that one, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, I felt threatened. I felt like you were doing too well. Yeah.
Do you know what, though? I've realized we're deep enough into this that I've said a lot of times after I watch a documentary, like, I got to dive deeper into this. And I never do. But
and you never do, because there's the whole world. We're learning every week. It's a new thing. Who has time?
But I gotta say, man, I would not have watched this or many of the movies we've watched. Ironically, even though we started this show about watching documentaries, I've always had a hard time in my life watching documentaries because when I'm about to put it on, I'm like, nah, I want to watch a movie like it's hard for me to actually. But this show has forced me to watch a bunch of this stuff that I never would have. And it's amazing. Like, I love that I know about sat diving now and you know, a little bit about depressurization or heliox or whatever the random things are that I learned. So I really love learning all this new shit. I got to be honest. I'm excited by it. I'm jazzed.
I agree. Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. I often am more in the mood to just veg out in front with a movie rather than a documentary. And now I know that I can go to dinner parties and just bore people to death with all this new knowledge of mine.
You know what, though? That sounds like you'll bore people to death, but most people are regurgitating the same like 3 or 4 facts that you hear from regular news sources or whatever. So if you were able to just bust out some random fact and be like, actually, you know, if you were that cold underwater, you could probably live for a half hour. People will be like, this guy knows some weird shit.
Yeah, that's right. Just as much as everybody loved Cliff Clavin in Cheers, you'll be that guy and everybody will love you for it.
Exactly. I can't remember Cheers well enough. Was he beloved or was he annoying?
He was annoying. He was the postman who came in with the little-known facts.
Yeah. Great character. Yeah. Great show. That's the main takeaway from this episode. Go watch Cheers.
Yeah, he actually created that character. Side note, the actor said, hey, do you have a bar know-it-all? And then he came up with so. Pretty good. Remember that next time you have an audition. You can come up with your own characters.
I noticed what you wrote for me is... trite, garbage, if I may be direct. Have you thought about changing it completely?
They love that.
Well, we made a vow last week to steer away from American-made movies, and this week we did that inadvertently. This week was more, I mean, I guess Scotland and European, and next week we're doing it again. Can you tell us about what next week's documentary is? Yeah,
it's something about a terrible thing that happens at a Romanian nightclub, and that's all I remember from it. It's called The Collective, and it was nominated for an Oscar, so that's why I chose it, because I was curious, and it's also somewhere else.
Bucharest, right?
Is it Bucharest? I thought it was, Is Bucharest?
Bucharest is in Romania, right? I believe it is. I think.
I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna go with your knowledge on this one because I'm woefully ignorant of that country.
We'll be less ignorant next week, and that's why we do it, baby.
Well, again, I always like these themes. Every week we're a little less ignorant.
That's a beautiful thing. That's a good thing to strive for.
Exactly. I really enjoyed this episode, even though I didn't love the film as much as you did. But please join us again next week with Alex and DJ Watcher Doc.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm DJ. And you?
And I'm Alex.
See you later, guys.
Yeah. Okay, bye-bye.